I've reviewed a few adaptations of fairy tales before, which suddenly made me remember a movie that I had heard of, but buried deep in the dark recesses of my mind. The 1996 film, Pinocchio's Revenge. It's a strange one, but I'm not sure what's more surprising. The fact that I remembered this movie at all, or that I didn't immediately forget it again. There's something so off-putting about this poster, it's so uncanny. If you told me that it was AI generated, I'd believe you. The small silhouette looks slightly misplaced, it's a little too far in the center, and the Pinocchio puppet looks strangely stretched. It's a poster that's straight out of a bad 90s video store. Blood and Honey director and producer Rhys Frake Waterfield plans on adapting Pinocchio into a slasher film called Pinocchio Unstrung. However, somebody already beat him to it. Pinocchio's Revenge doesn't seem super well known, as I think it was overshadowed by other films that have a very similar concept, and I will discuss that more later in this video. I did go into it under the assumption that it was just a cheap rip-off, but I was pleasantly surprised to find that it takes a much more psychological route compared to some of its predecessors. So, does Pinocchio's Revenge deserve more recognition? Let's find out. Without further ado, on with the review.
Polos is life, 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 sleep all night and then Polos is life.
The movie begins with a flashback where a police officer almost gets into a car crash while in a rainstorm, before cutting to a mysterious figure digging a makeshift grave. The figure is then revealed to be the suspect of a child murder case named Vincent Gotto, played by Louis Van Bergen. Well, that's sad. Maybe this is just the version that I'm watching, but this scene is super dark, and not in a spooky atmospheric lighting way, in a I can't see what's going on way. I know that there's a rainstorm going on, but still. While inspecting the crime scene, the police stumble across a small cold hand. At first they assume that it's another victim, but upon closer inspection, they discover that it's actually a Pinocchio puppet. I don't really get how you could confuse the two. The puppet is made of wood. The officer's initial confusion is understandable, but it's still a curious mistake. We then cut to present day.
No, Your Honor, he wasn't. He wasn't even charged. He was charged and convicted of only one murder. The murder of his own son.
Despite the premise of the film, this guy seems pretty guilty to me. Regardless, Gotto's solicitor, Jennifer Garrick, played by Rosalind Allen, is determined to prove that her client is not guilty. Seems like a rat race to me, but whatever. As Jennifer had requested evidence that supports Gotto's case 3 months prior, she finds the Pinocchio puppet sitting in her chair when she enters her office. That's totally not unsettling. Couldn't whoever delivered it just put it in a less creepy position? In a meeting with Jennifer, Gotto insists that he really has at least one victim, his son, and refuses to consider a sentence change from death to life imprisonment because his life is now meaningless. The guy's a prick, obviously, but I can't fault him there. Jennifer is unwavering though, and urges that even if Gotto's son was a victim, there's no evidence that he committed the other murders, which means the other killer is still out there. When Gotto tries to dissuade her with other confessions and physical intimidation, Jennifer still doesn't believe him.
That's very impressive, but I'm not convinced.
You're a fucking idiot.
Seriously, take a hint, lady. Jennifer's daughter Zoe, played by Britt Smith, yes, that Britt Smith, tries to invite her schoolmates to her birthday party. This cute moment is cut short when one of her classmates, Beth, snatches the invitations from Zoe and drops them in the mud as revenge for Zoe making a joke about her in class earlier that day. Yeah, the joke may have hurt Beth's feelings, but this is pretty mean. And then Zoe decides to escalate things by physically attacking Beth. Great way to get people excited about your party, Zoe. Beth heads to the hospital for some stitches after the dust settles from the fight. Jennifer gets a call from her mother about this, and Zoe declines to talk to her estranged father about the whole ordeal when she's offered the phone. Jennifer responds by grounding her for a fortnight, just what Zoe needed to make her birthday planning a real drag.
You know, her birthday is this Friday. Shit.
Well, she's grounded till then.
Well, if her own mother is forgetting her birthday, I'm not surprised that Zoe is struggling. The judge denies Jennifer's request to change Gotto's sentence, and Gotto's next scene walking to his execution? Better luck next time, Jennifer. Anyone else getting Wes Craven's Shocker vibes from this? Jennifer is incredibly disturbed by the way the case ended, and so takes the Pinocchio puppet home with the intention of examining it. After work, she tries to help her family get things ready for the party, and her boyfriend David, played by Todd Allen, stresses that she go and change her clothes while he gets the rest of her things from her truck. Assuming that the puppet was a birthday gift, David lets Zoe have it, and not wanting to hurt her feelings, Jennifer doesn't correct this. That's super irresponsible considering the puppet is literally evidence from a murder case, but we wouldn't have a plot if it wasn't for stupid horror movie characters.
Here I am! Just wanted to make sure the fire was out.
I'm impressed that the puppet really is functional, at least, but this foreshadowing really isn't a subtle way of creating tension. While David and Jennifer cuddle by the fire, we get our first direct suggestion that Pinocchio is alive. David then suggests to Zoe that Pinocchio is secretly evil, which again isn't very subtle. After Jennifer puts Zoe to bed, it looks like Pinocchio's head moved by itself while the two are distracted. Woo, spooky! Zoe talks to her therapist, Dr. Edwards, played by Aaron Lustig, about how she's worried that David hurt Pinocchio's feelings. When Dr. Edwards asks if she and Jennifer like David, Zoe responds with a yes, but reveals more worries about David taking her mum away and being alone. Well, David's gonna die, that's for sure. When Jennifer presents Zoe with a new, admittedly prettier doll, her daughter gets very defensive and maintains that the puppet is hers. While she did say that Pinocchio was just visiting, I think that Jennifer should just be honest and say that the doll is evidence in an important court case.
No, first Daddy left me, now you want to make Pinocchio leave too?
Talk about a kick in the feels. As Zoe gets ready to go to bed that night, Pinocchio sits on Zoe's cabinet with a stupid grin on his face. The dude could win a Goofball of the Year competition. She makes a remark about how she knows he'd never leave her, which is pretty sad. It's clear that this kid feels very lonely. Then, boom, cut to a jump scare that actually got me. I feel pretty ashamed about it, not gonna lie. I saw it coming and I've seen enough of these movies to know better. Somehow, Zoe, and every other kid in a movie with this premise, isn't completely creeped out. Maybe she should start seeing Dr. Edwards more often. In the morning, Zoe takes Pinocchio to school, although Jennifer planned on taking him to work. Instead, she finds the new doll that she gifted Zoe under Zoe's bed. And it's been put through the ringer, now heavily disfigured. Zoe soon regrets taking Pinocchio to school too, as Beth steals him and throws him over a fence. She's in for a world of trouble. The school bus is approaching, and Beth begins to ride her bicycle home. Pinocchio sticks a rake through the fence in one of the wheels, causing her to be struck by the bus. Zoe goes and tells Dr. Edwards immediately, who thinks that Zoe is just using Pinocchio as a coping mechanism. Jennifer questions Zoe about the incident, but Zoe's too busy defending Pinocchio to notice her suspicions. David overhears Zoe talking to Pinocchio, but he brushes it off as a pretend game. However, the next scene makes it very obvious that Pinocchio really is talking to Zoe, or at least, from her perspective he is. Pinocchio tells Zoe that her mum might abandon her if David is still around, and although she protests, saying that he can't become a real boy if he does bad things, Pinocchio has made up his mind. Although it's definitely past her bedtime, Zoe gets up, feeling a sense of urgency, and sets out to find Pinocchio. She hears noises and sees her puppet head to the basement, but David insists that she go to bed. This is a recurring issue with this guy, isn't it? Sometimes you just gotta let people go about their business, man. David's search for Pinocchio comes up empty, but as he tries to make his way back up, The door swings shut and David falls down the stairs, his head connecting with the floor. The door shuts slowly, leaving David in the dark. See, I knew something bad was going to happen to this guy.
I'm kind of psychic. I have a fifth sense.
In all seriousness though, I like the ambiguity of the culprit behind this sudden door shutting. It may have been Pinocchio, it may have been Zoe. Regardless of who is behind it, the intent behind it is unclear, and the incident could easily be seen as an accident. One thing's for certain, David's gonna have an irrational fear of doors from now on, but he won't remember exactly why. We cut to the hospital, where Zoe rushes to Jennifer with a cop in tow. The cop explains that Zoe called 911, and that David would have probably passed if she didn't. Later, she interrogates Pinocchio about what happened.
Did you make David fall down those stairs?
No.
This is a really effective shot, and it's pretty creative for what it's worth, especially as shadows tend to play tricks on juvenile minds. Next, Pinocchio suggests that they should try to get rid of the family's live-in nanny, Sophia, and at this point, Zoe should just destroy the doll. No puppet to real boy pipeline is worth this. The classic move, using a cricket in the hopes that Pinocchio will change his ways. Sophia explains to Zoe that in the original story, Pinocchio squished the cricket in a fit of rage due to his short temper. Oh boy, I wonder where this is going. Dr. Edwards abruptly leaves an appointment with Zoe to speak with a delivery person, leaving her alone with Pinocchio. The two argue about David's accident, each blaming the other. They're going for Olympic gold in out-guilting. Little does she know, Dr. Edwards has been taping his sessions to review them later. I'm not sure how ethical that is, but whatever. Jennifer wants to visit David the following day as his condition has improved, but worried that her mum's boyfriend will accuse her of pushing him, Zoe agrees to cut Pinocchio's strings and go to the hospital with him as long as he's good. This can't end well. Pinocchio turns off David's life support, and he goes into arrest before dying. Shouldn't there be an alarm attached to these machines? Code Blue anyone? Are all the medical staff on a coffee break at 2 in the morning? This death makes no sense. It's easily preventable, so I say the hospital staff set David up. Dr. Edwards calls for an emergency meeting with Jennifer, where he shows her the tape of his and Zoe's last session. According to the tape footage, Zoe is seemingly arguing with no one. He suggests that Jennifer have Zoe committed, but she refuses because Zoe doesn't seem evil. Essentially, Zoe passes her mum's vibe check.
Nobody said anything about evil, but she's a very disturbed little girl.
She dialed 911. She saved David's life, for Christ's sake.
Mission Control, we have a belligerent dumbass here that won't cooperate.
Jennifer returns home to find Sophia cleaning Zoe's clothes from last night, as they got muddy. Thinking back to the appointment earlier, she wakes Zoe up and demands to know where she went the previous night. Zoe reluctantly confesses, but states that she couldn't find David and only wanted to see him. Adding that Pinocchio did find David though, Zoe triggers Jennifer into throwing the doll into the trunk of her car. We see a POV shot heading into Jennifer's room, and when she awakens, we see Pinocchio's silhouette standing over her until she turns on the light. In his place, Zoe is holding a knife, but she just wanted to protect her mother from Pinocchio. Jennifer confesses to a priest that she became friends with earlier, that she suspects that Gotto killed his son because his son was the real murderer, explaining why the murders stopped the same night that Gotto was caught. What if a demon was taking various forms and convincing people to kill?
I do personally believe in demons. But I'm not so sure that one would take the form of a dog.
I've seen The Omen. You're not fooling anyone, Padre. Sophia tries to reassure Zoe that Pinocchio won't hurt Jennifer as he now has a conscience, but when Zoe goes to check on the cricket, well...
What the hell we gonna do now?
Sophia runs to check on Zoe, but she is attacked by an off-screen figure with a fire poker. When Jennifer finds the scene that evening, Zoe runs away from her, but Jennifer is hit with the fire poker. The person holding it is revealed to be Zoe, but the girl insists it's because she took it from Pinocchio. Zoe then conveniently disappears, only for Jennifer to actually be attacked by a knife-wielding Pinocchio. He chases her into a room where she barricades the door with, well, herself, and this scene does look oddly familiar. After being attacked by the puppet one too many times, Jennifer throws the doll into a glass table, only to notice that her daughter is in the doll's place. The film cuts to some point in the future, with Jennifer trying to comfort a now inanimate Zoe in a padded cell. She insists that she saw Pinocchio move and that it wasn't really Zoe, but Dr. Edwards insists that she only saw the doll move because of a concussion. The film closes on a fade out of Pinocchio's eyes. The concept of a killer doll has existed within horror for a very long time. One of the earliest on-screen appearances of such a character was featured in the original Twilight Zone series, that ran from 1959 to 1964. The episode in question is Season 5 Episode 6, titled Living Doll. The doll in question is named Talkie Tina, and she is gifted to a girl named Chrissy. Chrissy's stepfather is an ill-tempered man named Eric, who doesn't get along with the doll. Long story short, it doesn't end so well for Eric. In terms of direct comparisons, however, there are a couple of films that come to mind. Aside from the obvious, this film really reminded me of the 1978 film Magic in concept, and I know that I'm not the only one who's made the connection. The film stars Anthony Hopkins as a failing magician and ventriloquist named Corky, who appears to become way too attached to his dummy, Fats. As their relationship deepens, Corky and Fats end up murdering people close to them, and it's left ambiguous as to whether Fats is real or whether Corky is simply very mentally ill. I'd also like to note how good Hopkins' ventriloquism skills are here.
Nothing to lose but your chains. Here he is, boys. Here he is, wild. Here he is, fat.
Of course, there's another scary ventriloquist dummy that reminds me of this film, but that's a topic for another day. Did you know that the novel and screenplay for Magic were actually written by William Goldman, the same guy who wrote the novel and screenplay for The Princess Bride? It's a testament to his talent that he could craft such compelling stories in both the horror and romance fantasy genres. Similarly to Magic, it seems to be up to the audience to decide the truth behind the murders. In Pinocchio's Revenge, the director leaves us with plenty of scenes with clues to mull over. For one, all of the incidents that could be attributed to Pinocchio's mischievous behaviour are things that a child might do. We also never actually see Pinocchio kill anyone on screen, so it's unclear as to who is actually responsible. The struggle between Jennifer and Pinocchio at the film's climax raises some disturbing questions. One possibility is that Pinocchio's malevolent force is no longer just manipulation, but actual possession. The squished conscience being found by Zoe could have allowed him to possess her, and these possessions may influence others, hence why Jennifer could see him. Similarly, Pinocchio's mouth moves and doesn't move at different points of the film, although his dexterity does increase as the film progresses. On the other hand, this might merely be the film conveying Zoe's interpretation of events, as on Dr. Edwards' tape, Pinocchio remains static. Another possible hint is that in the scene right before we see Pinocchio talking to Zoe on screen, Jennifer is asking a client for details about some murders that he has committed. He explains that his television told him to do it, and doesn't appreciate being thought of as mentally ill.
I'm not crazy, lady. The box did talk to me.
Whether this is hinting at the idea that Zoe really is mentally ill, or is supporting Jennifer's demons disguised as unsuspecting objects theory, I'm not entirely sure. And I think that's the point. The special effects in this film are very 1996, I can tell you that much. I couldn't actually find too much information about this film's budget, but it does look like it's on the lower end of financing. The use of CGI in the film hasn't aged too gracefully, so I don't blame them for not making Pinocchio's mouth move too much in the first place. The puppet also looks laughably janky when it moves around too. I'm not entirely sure how they did this effect either, I can't tell whether it's the same marionette used when Pinocchio is dormant, an animatronic, or someone in a suit. I don't really know what I'm looking at here. Perhaps they shrouded it in darkness a lot of the time to try to hide how cheap the effect was. But what do general audiences think of the film? Let's take a look at some reviews. It's not rated very highly on Rotten Tomatoes, only having an audience score of 25% at the time that this video was made. The reviews on IMDb generally seem to find the movie pretty mediocre, but some seem to think it's good, and others terrible. The average rating on Letterboxd is 2.2 stars out of 5, which is, again, pretty mediocre. The movie has a lot more written reviews than I thought it would, varying from lifeless, uninspired, boring to don't let the title fool you, this is a masterpiece. From what I've seen on there, there's no clear consensus on what the movie is trying to achieve or what its strengths and weaknesses are. Some viewers seem to appreciate its camp, while others find it uninspired. I have to give it to one viewer who nailed it. The film's title, Pinocchio's Revenge, is a head-scratcher. Who is he apparently getting revenge on? What is he avenging? The fact that the killer may not even be Pinocchio renders this title nonsensical, clickbait even. According to an article by the Schlock Pit, the team behind Pinocchio's Revenge went through several titles before settling on that one. In my opinion, the Pinocchio Syndrome would have been a more fitting title given the film's actual content. Overall, I actually enjoyed this movie a lot more than I thought I would. I went into it assuming that it would be just another Child's Play ripoff, especially as it was released during that franchise's break between 1991 and 1998. I have to say, I was pleasantly surprised. The film has its flaws, and is noticeably low budget at points, but it's definitely not a shoddy cash grab. Although I found that it lacks nuance in a lot of the dialogue, it never talks down to the audience. I could also just be so used to horror films in general that I find them predictable now. I can appreciate the refreshing departure from the typical one-line equipping slasher villain, who was being hung out to dry until this point in the mid-90s. The film's decision to forego this formula and focus on a more nuanced, psychologically complex villain is a welcome change, even if it had been done before. Well, that's all for this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and as always, thanks for watching.
The blue and green ones are my favorite kind, but I'll eat the colored ones from time to time, cause Polos is life, 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 Polos is life. Sleep all night